A core ingredient in Brazilian cuisine is manioc, and here it is. Now this is a tuber. It's also known as yuca or cassava, and it can be ground down into a coarse or fine meal. Now here in the States, we know it as tapioca, and we use it in two applications usually. There's a fine powder, it's a starch, use it to thicken cobblers, or we have these larger pearls. You might know this from tapioca pudding or even bubble tea. But Julia is going to show us how to use tapioca in a new, to us, recipe called Pao de Queijo, and that is a Brazilian cheese bread.
It is. I love cheese bread.
I know. Anywhere it comes from, we love cheese bread.
Yeah, and the great thing about this is that it's made entirely with tapioca. There's no flour in it, and so it has a very different texture, a very chewy texture that's a little bit lighter than flour.
Perfect.
Now we're going to use a very specific method to make this dough. It's the pas de choux method, and that's when you heat up the liquids and you add hot liquids to the flour that traps some steam and moisture that helps it puff up in the oven. So we're going to heat up our liquids to get started. I'm going to add, first off, the milk. 2/3 of a cup plus 2 tablespoons of milk. To this, we're going to add a 1/2 cup of vegetable oil. And last but not least, a little bit of butter for flavor. That's 1.5 tablespoons of unsalted butter. I'm just going to heat this up over high heat until the butter's melted and that has come to a boil.
Okay.
Meanwhile, we're going to take a look at our dry mixture. So this is about 3 cups of tapioca starch, but I highly suggest you weigh it because the starch is a lot like cornstarch. It's hard to pack into a cup, so you can get some very different amounts. So weigh it, it should be 12 ounces.
All right.
To this, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of kosher salt and just a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. Now, we are going to rely on the steam to really give it its lift, but that baking powder is just a little bit of insurance.
Gotcha.
All right, so I'm just gonna mix this for a couple seconds on low using the paddle just to mix those ingredients together. And let's take a look at our, oh, perfect. You can see this has come to a boil. And while it's still very hot and while the mixer is still on low, I'm gonna add it right to the mixer. All right, we're gonna let the mixer go for about 2-3 minutes and let all that tapioca starch hydrate.
Okay.
All right, so all that starch is hydrated and it's time to add the eggs. We have 2 large eggs. And now we're just gonna keep it on low and keep mixing it until it's nice and shiny and it begins to stick to the bowl. Kind of looks like frosting, and that takes about 8 minutes. All right, you can see the transformation that tapioca starch made as it was whipped and allowed to incorporate air and hydrate.
It really does look like frosting.
It does, doesn't it?
Yes.
All right, so now the best part, the cheese. So classically, they used a cheese called aged Minas in these Brazilian rolls. Really hard to find around here, but it has a very similar flavor to Parmesan, which we're gonna add. But we're also gonna add a little bit of pecorino, because that little sheepy tang is beautiful in it. So with 3.5 ounces of each finely grated Parmesan and pecorino romano. All right, so we're just gonna turn this mixer back on low and let that cheese get incorporated, which will take about 30 to 60 seconds. All right, that is good to go.
Smells cheesy.
So as you can see, this dough is very sticky. And believe it or not, this is a drier dough than many of the recipes we found. A lot of the recipes were almost more like a batter than a dough, but it made the insides of the rolls just really gooey. We wanted it to be a bit breadier. So we're using a little bit of a drier dough, but there's no way we could shape this into rolls now. It's just too sticky. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put it in the refrigerator and let it rest and chill for about 2 hours, and that way we'll be able to form rolls really easily. So here I'm just gonna compact the dough into the bottom of the bowl, cover it with plastic wrap, and into the fridge for 2 hours it goes.
All right.
All right, so this dough is nicely chilled and ready to be shaped into rolls.
It's very firm now.
It is, isn't it? And it's sort of unusual for a bread dough to be this firm when you're ready to roll it out. But that is the key to gluten-free baking. Everything is backwards. So it's hard to tell when things are done and it's hard to tell when dough is ready to go.
We're gonna put this in a cold oven, right?
So we're gonna make 8 rolls out of this. So I'm just gonna score the dough in the bowl with a bowl scraper into 8 sections here.
And the reason you're not dumping it out on the counter is because?
You could if you wanted to, but it's just very sticky.
Gotcha.
I'd rather not get the counter dirty if you didn't have to.
Right, plus you might be tempted to add flour to it.
That's right. What you want to do is get your hands just a little wet. That helps the dough from sticking. You're just making meatballs. That's it. That's it. You're just making round little balls here that will turn into rolls.
Okay.
It's that simple.
Really?
Yep.
All right.
All right, here's
Can
some
I?
water. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Let me get you some dough out here. I'm kind of eager for you to see the texture of this dough because it's just so unlike other doughs that we usually bake with.
What is that like?
It's kind of like a sugar cookie dough. It's kind of what it feels like to me sometimes.
It's what it looks like as well. A giant sugar cookie.
All right, there you go.
Thank you.
We got a little assembly line going on.
I like
there.
this.
So a lot of times, a lot of recipes made these rolls a lot smaller. We liked them big because we wanted to serve them on a sandwich or with a meal.
No, it's so malleable. I mean, it's not springy or anything like a wheat flour dough. And it's got this sticky substance on the outside that I imagine is going to bake up into really, really crisp texture.
All right, now before we put these in the oven, we're gonna brush them with an egg glaze. That'll get them nice and brown and sort of that crackle top that is iconic. So here I have a large egg. To this, I'm gonna add a teaspoon of water and a 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt, just to give it a little seasoning. All right, we're just gonna brush these on the rolls.
Now, you're right about this dough being stiffer than a lot of recipes. It's more like a batter. I've even seen these scooped into muffin tins.
Ah,
Yep.
yep. There's that last roll. Looking good, looking good.
It almost looks like you lacquered them with butter.
And they're so perfectly round. I love that.
Beautiful.
So this wasn't a mistake that there are 2 baking sheets here. These rolls have a tendency to burn on the bottom. So an easy way to prevent that is just to insulate it with a second sheet underneath. That way the top and the inside can bake at the same rate as the bottom.
That's great.
So we're gonna put these into a hot oven. Now right now that oven is at 450 degrees to heat up, but when we put these in, we're gonna lower that oven to 375. We just want that initial blast of heat so we can get that steam going.
Okay.
And then they're gonna bake for about 40 minutes. Of course, halfway through, we're gonna spin them around. Can you smell it?
I could smell them a mile away.
Oh.
Beautiful.
Aren't they? Perfect little round rolls with that crackle top. All right, so these are pretty hot right now,
Yes.
obviously. So we're not gonna eat them right away, but we're not gonna let them cool for too long, just 5 minutes.
Okay.
Because you definitely wanna eat them while they're warm. 5 minutes is up.
Thank goodness.
Pick your roll, any roll.
I'm gonna go right there. Boom.
I'm gonna pick this one. So they're still warm, but they're not as blatantly hot as they were.
Wow.
Right.
Oh, I love that little bit of stretch in there too. Oh yeah. This for breakfast would be beautiful.
Which is how they're commonly eaten. But I just think they're good any time of day.
The crust is where it's at. Absolutely amazing. It's cheesy, it has this really toasty cheese flavor, but also that crisp texture. Just incredible.
Well, it's the cheese flavor, it's the crackle top, and it's that chewy texture that I love.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you.
And you're gonna wanna make this quick, cheesy bread at home. Mix tapioca starch and baking powder with a hot mixture of milk, butter, and oil. Add eggs, Parmesan, and pecorino, then refrigerate. Roll it into balls and bake until crunchy, hot, and steamy inside. So from our test kitchen to your kitchen, and easy, not to mention cheesy, Pao de Queijo or Brazilian cheese bread.
Thanks for watching America's Test Kitchen. What'd you think?
Well, leave a comment and let us know which recipes you're excited to make, or you can just say hello.
You can find links to today's recipes and reviews in the video description.
And don't forget to subscribe to our channel.
See you later.
I'll see you later.